Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to Unparalleled Universe for another action figure review, and today we're taking a look at the brand new SV Action Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse Peter B. Parker from Sentinel Toys. And we're going to jump right into it because there's a lot to talk about with this figure, so we're not going to waste any time. Let's go ahead and take a very quick look at the packaging. As you can see here, he does come in this big, huge box, and the reason why is because I got the one that came with the big diorama, and it really wasn't by choice, but that was the one that was available at the time that I chose to buy it. So it is what it is. I really didn't want to have to buy this big huge diorama, but I'm going to get use out of it. It does look very cool, and it might make for like a really dope display piece just to put a bunch of Spider-Man figures on there or something like that, you know. We'll see what happens. But anyways, this box does look cool, but it's humongous. There's all kinds of cool shots of the figure. You can see over here, we got Spider-Man in a bunch of different poses. And then right here, there's a small little window where you could actually see the figure, but you can't really see all that much. You just see him and then a couple of his alternate heads. And then right here, we get some nice looking Spider-Man artwork. Right here, we get the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse logo. And then on this side, we get a look at that diorama, and then we get a look at the figure itself with a bunch of its accessories and all that cool stuff. And that's about it for this big crazy box. Let's go ahead and open it up and take a look at the figure. And so here we have Peter B. Parker right out of the box, and I've got to say, this is a very interesting figure. There's a whole lot to unpack here. He's got a bunch of little accessories and interchangeable parts and all kinds of different looks that you could give the figure. You could almost portray two different characters with this figure, which is really interesting, and there's a lot of interesting things going on here. Some of the engineering on the articulation is very unique and different from things I've seen before or that we're typically used to seeing, so that's always interesting. And yeah, man, I like this thing a lot. It's kind of an experience exploring this guy because it's very, very different. You know, I'll be honest, like when I first got the Miles Sentinel figure, I wasn't blown away by it. I thought it was cool, but there was a few things that I didn't like about it. With this Peter B. Parker, there's nothing that jumps out to me as a negative. I'm really, really loving this thing right out of the box. And the more time I spend with it, the more I like it. Like when I first pulled him out of the box, I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome. And then once I started changing parts out, I was like, oh man, I like this more and more. And then once I started posing him around, I was like, damn, this thing is freaking incredible. But before we get too deep into Peter B. Parker, let me go ahead and show you this diorama. So this thing is awesome, especially considering it's something that I kind of wish that I didn't have to buy. I think this thing is really, really cool. It came out very nice. I like the texture that it has. It kind of has like a stone texture, but the details on it are kind of soft, so it doesn't look too realistic, and it kind of maintains that animated look, and I think that is really cool. But check out this sculpting work on it. I really like this lion face, man. This is so awesome. The mouth looks good, the eyes look good, the ears, the mane, I guess you could call this back here, like the lion's mane, but man, look at that. That is so dope. And then on the back here, there are a couple of like mounting options. I think you might be able to just stick a nail in there or something, or like hang it up on a nail, or you could punch that out, stick a nail in there, whatever you got to do. But man, this is cool. And then once you start throwing figures on there, it really comes to life. So you could put Miles on there like that, and then grab Peter. Just have him hanging out like on the front here or something. He will kind of slide, so you might have to figure something out to get him on there, but oh yeah, it is kind of smooth, so you might have to maybe get some blue tack or something like that to get him to stay. Or there you go. Look at that. That is freaking crazy. That's awesome. How cool is that? Just imagine that like mounted on your wall with maybe other Spider-Man figures on here. Might be able to fit someone else on there. Damn, look at that. That is so cool. Yeah, again, you know, I would have preferred to not buy the version that came with this diorama, but now that I have it, I'm very happy with it, and I think it's very, very cool. Let's go ahead and get Miles off there before he falls and loses his shoelaces or something. But yeah, back to Peter. So they did some really interesting things with like the engineering, and we'll take a closer look at some of it when we're looking at the articulation. But these shoulder joints are very interesting. I like the way they look, and they function really well. And then on the back of the thighs here, he kind of has these dips. And When I saw pictures of the figure and someone pointed out the dips in the thighs, I thought it was going to bug me, but it really doesn't bug me at all. And these dips allow the legs to come way up like that, so how cool is that? And it really doesn't interfere with the aesthetic of the figure. I mean, in my opinion, you could definitely see the dips, but they're not very distracting. And he does have an interchangeable lower body, so this one here is like the chubbier one, I guess you could say, like the official Peter B. Parker. But you know, I kind of wish it was a little chubbier. I mean, it's bigger than the alternative, but he doesn't quite have a big, like, beer belly. I mean, if you position him like that, there you go, you kind of get the belly. But let's go ahead and change these parts out, because when I first pulled the figure out of the box and he was like this, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. But once I put the slimmer parts on, I really started to like this figure like a lot more, and I was already really enjoying it. So kind of went from like a cool Peter B. Parker to like freaking an awesome, just a Spider-Man. Like, this could just kind of work for your general Spider-Man. And as you can see, the parts are very easy to switch out. But yeah, look at that. So this is with like the skinnier body. I guess this could be like the Peter Parker from the movie. But you know, this works as just like your regular generic Spider-Man, you know? I don't know if generic's the right word, but it just works for a really good comic book Spider-Man. Check that out. Damn. That is freaking... Dude, that looks so awesome. Man, that looks good. And we'll get into the articulation, but I was so impressed with the amount that this guy was able to crouch, and just how effortless all the articulation moves. Everything is just so smooth and pleasant to handle. I did have some stiff joints though. I did have to heat up the knee because, you know, the knee was not moving. But once I put it under some hot water, it freed up and it was good to go. But aside from that, all the joints were very smooth and easy to handle. But yeah, look at that, man. So dope. But let's go ahead and get in close and take a look at the details on him, because he does have some really nice sculpting work, and I really like what they did with the web lines. So the sculpt on Spider-Man is really interesting. They've got some cool things going on here, but let's start off at the head. I really do like the way this head looks. It works very well for a non-specific kind of Spider-Man. It doesn't really feel like artist-specific or anything like that. It just looks like a very good Spider-Man head sculpt. I like the web patterns. I like the shape of the eyes. Just everything about this looks really good to me. And I like the way they sculpted the web lines. So all the web lines throughout the whole body are sculpted, and then they painted them in with like a gold kind of paint. And I think that's awesome. Like, it doesn't pop out as much as like black, but it still allows you to see the pattern. And I think that is pretty genius. And it came out really good on this figure. And the whole figure has texture on it, as you could see. Like between the webs, you could see a little bit of a texture to his suit. Same thing right here on the blue, so that looks good. And then we have the really nice and clean looking spider logo on the chest. And as you can see, all the articulation is very well hidden. I know there were some concerns about some gappiness with the shoulders, but you really don't have to worry about it. I mean, there is a big gap if you start like moving the figure around, but you just you have to position it in a way where you don't see the gaps. Like, it's very possible to make it work. And in most cases, it looks really good. So there you go. Let's go ahead and take a look at the logo on the back. Ooh, that's nice. I like that. Yeah, check out the way they painted the web lines. It's very cool. The joints look really good. The ball joints at the wrist aren't too big. They look nice. It's very seamless and very good looking. Yeah, look at that. It's really good. And I know a lot of people are concerned with the dips in the back of the hips, but they're really not that bad. If you focus in on them, you know, of course, it's kind of like, oh, that's a little extreme. But, you know, for the most part, you know, if you're looking at the figure from the front, you're not going to see it. Even mostly from the side, you're not going to see it. But if you're looking directly at it from the back, then you could see those dips. But what you get out of the articulation definitely makes up for it. So I think it's fine. Then moving down into the lower half of the figure, you know, same kind of thing, you know, it's Spider-Man. But it does look really, really good. I love the way they did the web lines. I think the sculpting on him is very clean. The paintwork is very clean. And the figure just looks really, really nice. And aside from the head that we've already looked at, he does come with 4 additional head sculpts. He comes with 1 more masked head, and I think this is really nice. I like the big eyes. It's very expressive, and it does have a very animated look and feel to it. So I think that's super dope. And just like the other head sculpt, this is sculpted very well, and I think this looks really nice. And then as far as the unmasked head sculpts, I think these things are pretty damn incredible, man. Like, I've heard some people criticize these, and I'm not really sure why, because to me, these things look amazing. Like, they look like the cartoon. It doesn't look like a piece of plastic painted in the style of a cartoon. It looks like some animation. When you take a picture of it, it's like, it's almost indistinguishable from the cartoon, which is crazy to me. So they did a really good job with it. I love the detail on this head sculpt. I like the facial expression. He kind of has like a goofy look on his face, but I think it is super good. I like the 5 o'clock shadow that he has going on. His hair swooped to the side looks really good. His eyes kind of looking off to the side kind of gives him a lot of character. But man, look at that. That is super dope. And then he also comes with some glasses, so you could kind of change up his look a little bit even further. Man, look at that. Dude, I can't believe how much it looks like a cartoon. It's crazy to me. And then here's the second unmasked Peter B head, and this is probably my favorite unmasked head. I really like the facial expression. It's a little bit more serious, but it does look equally as impressive as the previous head as far as executing that animated look. The little lines around the nose and on the head and around the eyes really sells that animated look. But I think this came out really nice. Once again, we got the really good looking 5 o'clock shadow, the hair swoop to the side, and yeah, man, this is like crazy. It's like mind-boggling, you know? It's like, damn, how the hell did they make it look so much like the cartoon? It is really crazy, but yeah, this head sculpt is very nice. And then last but not least, we have the Peter Parker head sculpt. This is the version that appeared at the beginning of the movie. This is the Peter Parker from Miles's dimension, and I think this looks very cool. I like the detail. Once again, it's just as impressive as the previous two. I love the animated look. I love the blonde hair and blue eyes. And I feel like this head sculpt could work pretty well for a Ben Reilly head sculpt. So, you know, if you want to try to make a Into the Spider-Verse Ben Reilly or something, you might be able to use this. But I think this looks very good. Once again, we have the animated lines, and just everything about this is very well done in my opinion. So, all 5 head sculpts are awesome to me, but the most impressive are definitely the unmasked head sculpts. In addition to the 5 different heads that he comes with, he also comes with a bunch of different sets of hands. So first off, we have a set of open relaxed hands, and then we have a set of open dramatic hands, and these are probably my favorite hands that he comes with. I just think they look so expressive and awesome, so I like those a lot. Next up, we have a set of wall crawling hands, and then this next set of hands is kind of like a fist slash gripping hand, because most of the hand is balled up into a fist, but then his thumb is slightly raised so that you could use these hands to hold on to like a newspaper or something. Next up, we have a set of gripping hands that could be used to hold on to the various web accessories that he comes with. And then we have a set of ungloved hands that look awesome alongside the unmasked head. I think this is super cool. And then he does have a coffee mug holding hand, but only for his right side, so that's nice. And then last but not least, we do have a set of thwip hands, but these do have web effects attached to them. So if you want to have him with the thwip hands, you have to have the webs along with it. You know, and that's fine. It does look pretty cool. I think the web effects on the hands look pretty nice, so I'm okay with that. In addition to those web accessories, we also get a couple of other ones. First off, we have some web lines, and these are nice. You could use these for a bunch of different things, but the standout web accessories are definitely these guys here, and it's like 3 different web lines that are kind of all bunched up together, and you could use these to recreate those scenes where he's like stopping trains or, you know, something big and crazy like that. So it's awesome that we got these. I don't think we've seen these with another Spider-Man figure, so I like these a lot. And that's it for the accessories. A bunch of really cool stuff. And then just to show you a couple of part swaps, here we have the Sentinel Peter B. Parker with the Mafex jacket, sweats, and head. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the lower legs from the Mafex figure onto the Sentinel version, so it's not quite complete, but you know, this does look really good. You know, the clothing fits on here very well. It doesn't really hinder the articulation at all. Oh, this head isn't all the way on here. It's being held on here with a little bit of tack. The ball joint wouldn't just pop in, and I don't want to force it, so just threw some tack in there, and there we go. So that works if that's something that you want to do. But you know, for me, I'm just gonna keep my Mafex Peter B as like the bum version, and then the Sentinel as the regular version. But yeah, that does look pretty good. And one more thing I wanted to show is the blonde Peter Parker head on the Ben Reilly Spider-Man figure from Mafex. Look at that. That's awesome, right? That works. That works as a Into the Spider-Verse Ben Reilly. And then now for some size comparisons, we have Peter B. Parker alongside the Sentinel Miles Morales and the Mafex Gwen Stacy. And I really like the way these three figures look together. I was expecting Miles and Peter to look good together because they're both quality figures from the same company, but I'm really happy with the way that the Mafex Gwen Stacy fits along with them. I would like to see Sentinel make a Gwen Stacy, but if they never do, I'm more than happy to have this Mafex one hang around with the Sentinel figures because she is an awesome figure and she looks really good with them. And then here we have them alongside the Marvel Legends Into the Spider-Verse Miles Morales and Peter B. Parker. And I think the Sentinel version looks pretty cool with them too if you want to set them up in just like a Into the Spider-Verse display using the Sentinel version as like your blonde-haired Peter Parker, you know, like that version. That could work because, yeah, I think these Marvel Legends versions are really nice for sure. And then here we have them alongside the Mafex Into the Spider-Verse Miles Morales and Peter B. Parker. And I think these figures are pretty compatible with this Sentinel version. I kind of want to do some type of comparison between the Sentinel Peter B and the Mafex Peter B, but it's going to be a little difficult because they each kind of capture different versions of the same character. So I don't know. I'm still kind of debating that. We'll see if I actually get around to it, but I think it might make for an interesting discussion to kind of put those two against each other. We'll see. And then next up, we have them alongside some of the best Spider-Man figures ever. On the left, we have the Mafex Ben Reilly Spider-Man, and on the right, we have the Mafex Classic Peter Parker Spider-Man. And then next up, we have them alongside the Marvel Legends Comic Book Prowler. And then on the opposite side, we have the Marvel Legends Into the Spider-Verse Prowler. And I really wish another company would take a stab at the Into the Spider-Verse Prowler. As it is right now, we only have the Marvel Legends one. And he's cool and everything, but I feel like Mafex or Sentinel would probably make a better version of the character. And then next up, we have them alongside the Marvel Legends HasCon exclusive animated series Venom and the Marvel Legends Absolute Carnage. And then here we have him alongside the Marvel Legends Jackal and the Marvel Legends Mysterio. And then here he is alongside the Marvel Legends Kraven the Hunter and the Marvel Legends Electro. And of course we have Pizza Spider-Man and Bucky Cap. And then to get him with some Avengers, here we have him alongside the Marvel Legends 80th Anniversary Captain America and Marvel Legends 80th Anniversary Iron Man. And then to show him alongside a couple of big characters, here we have him alongside the Marvel Legends Armadillo Build-A-Figure and the Marvel Select Classic Rhino. And I know that was a lot of size comparisons, but hopefully I got him next to somebody that you wanted to see him next to, and you get a good idea of how he'll fit into your collection along with your other 6-inch lines. And the articulation on Spider-Man is pretty damn insane. They've got a really interesting approach to some of the joints, but man, I really like the way that it came out, and he is just so much fun to pose around and play with. As I said before, all the joints just feel so smooth, and he's effortless to get into some really dynamic poses. That's one thing that Sentinel is really good at. They're really good at making their figures look like they're in motion. Like no matter what pose you put either one of these figures in, they look like they're moving. And that's something very unique about Sentinel. But man, the articulation on this thing is crazy. But let's go ahead and get into it, starting off with the head. He does have movement at the upper neck and at the lower neck. So using both of those, you can get him to look up to about right there, which is pretty decent. And he could look down to right there, which is nice. And then we get some nice side to side. You can get his head to tilt a crazy amount. Look at that. Man. Same thing going this way. And then obviously you get left to right. But yeah, look at, you could get all kinds of attitude out of his neck area. So good stuff at the head and neck. And then for the torso, we do have a diaphragm cut. And then we do have a ball joint at the waist. So using both of those, look at this. Oh man, that is crazy. Crazy movement to the side. And it will pop out if you get too crazy with it, but it's not a big deal just to pop it back into place. And then you could get him to bend back to about right there, which is pretty good. And then he could bend forward a really good amount. Check that out. Now I have the skinnier body on him right now. And that's how far forward it goes with the skinny body. But if you have the chubbier Peter B. Parker body, then it still bends pretty much the same amount. Maybe slightly less, but not noticeably so. So it worked out perfectly fine. You still get really good articulation out of both setups. And then you can twist at the diaphragm, and you can also twist at the waist. And just, man, look at this movement on this torso. Just ridiculous stuff. And then you could get him to crouch like crazy. It's like some of the best crouching I've seen on a Spider-Man figure. Look at that. Crazy. Get his arms in front of... Oops. Look at that. Really awesome stuff. But man, I really love this torso. Get some crazy movement out of it. And then now for the arms. The arms are really interesting too, because he has a ball joint on the shoulder, but it's interesting how they did it. So it's just the ball joint, and then the shoulder is stuck onto the ball joint. But it's kind of hard to explain. The ball joint is in there, but you get like the shoulder rotates on the ball joint a crazy amount, and it almost works the same as butterfly joints. Look at that. Look how far you could get his arm around him. That's like more than a lot of figures with butterfly joints. That is crazy. And then you could kind of rotate them to like change up like the way he looks a little bit. Make him look a little buffer by rotating his shoulders in. But yeah, these shoulder joints are really interesting. They're kind of hard to explain, but they're awesome. And then you can move his arm all the way around. You can bring his arms up to the side to about right there. And then he does have upper bicep swivel. He has a crazy double jointed elbow. Look at that. Bam. Bam. Damn, that's crazy. And then he does have a ball joint at the wrist, fortunately. That's an improvement they made over the Miles figure, which did not have that. So you have a hinge and a swivel, and you can rotate it around and all kinds of good stuff. So good movement at the hands. And then at the legs, we do have ball joints. So you could bring his leg way up to right there. So that is a really good amount. Bring his leg back to about right there. Then it kind of kicks out to the side. But then, speaking of going to the side, look how much you could get his leg out to the side for some like kicking poses and stuff. Bam. Really good movement out to the side. And then he does have like an upper thigh rotation, and it's kind of hidden in there, so that's cool. And then he does have double jointed knees. Bam, look at that. Crazy. And then at the ankle, we have a ball joint which rotates, and then you get a rocking foot ankle joint on there. You could bring it forward to right there. You could bring it up to right there, and then he does have a toe hinge. But man, some of the articulation on this guy is just crazy. Like some of it's familiar, but even the stuff that's familiar works better than it does on a lot of other types of figures, you know? Like for example, the double jointed knees and elbows. Like some of the best double jointed knees and elbows that you'll see on a 6-inch figure. And then the shoulders, which are engineered like in a completely new way. You know, it's like technically less points of articulation, but it gets just the same amount of movement than it would if it was like a butterfly joint, you know? Or pretty much. I guess it doesn't go back as far as a butterfly joint would, but it still works out really good. And aesthetically, it looks way better. There's not as many cuts. It's not as busy. It looks clean, but still super functional. And most importantly, you can get his arms in front of him, which I always like to do. But man, this is such an amazing figure and just so much fun to play with. The articulation is freaking ridiculous on this thing. I couldn't be happier with it. So super good job on the articulation. All right, so overall, at the end of the day, when the smoke clears, the dust settles, and it's all said and done, this is a pretty incredible figure. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. I love the way he looks. The sculpting work on him is very well done. I like the detail, the texture on the suit, the overall look. It just does a good job of capturing like a good-looking Spider-Man. Just everything about it looks really nice to me. And at the same time, it does capture that animated feel from the movie, but it's not restricted to that. It still just feels like a good Spider-Man, just overall. Like, it could fit in pretty much anywhere. You could put it with your Marvel Legends as your go-to Spider-Man. You could put it with your Mafex stuff. I think he looks good as just a regular Spider-Man. He's not so stylized that he looks out of place with other figures. So I think they did a good job of making him, like, giving him some crossover appeal with other different types of figures. But at the same time, he does look like he came from the movie. And that's kind of like the idea of like Peter Parker in Into the Spider-Verse. He kind of just feels like a generic Spider-Man, and I think this figure represents that very well, up until we meet like Peter B. Parker, who's kind of like older and chubbier, and there's more unique things about Peter B. Parker. But just Peter Parker in the Into the Spider-Verse movie, he's just like a Spider-Man, you know. And this figure is just a really good Spider-Man figure. The articulation is ridiculous. It's so smooth and so pleasant to handle. The range of motion on the joints is like super impressive. It's by far one of the funnest Spider-Man figures to actually handle. He has like the articulation on him is better than pretty much any other Spider-Man figure that I've seen, and that includes like anything from Marvel Legends, Mafex, you know, Figure Arts, any of those companies. I feel like this guy has the best articulation that I've seen on a Spider-Man figure. And I mean, this crouch right here is like evidence of that. That's like the proof. That's all the proof you need, because there's no other Spider-Man figure that could get into a crouch this good, in my opinion. The crouch on this guy is just incredible. And yeah, I'm just really blown away by the articulation on him. It's very interesting, you know. They did a lot of really great stuff with it, and everything is just so smooth and enjoyable to handle. So like, they did a great job with the articulation. And another thing I love about it is that no matter what you do with him, he always looks like he's in motion or like he's ready to pop out, you know? It's really crazy. And that's something that Sentinel is very good at. They displayed that with Miles, just kind of making it look like the figures are moving, like moving cartoons, you know? And then as far as like the accessories go, he comes with a bunch of different awesome hands. He comes with the 5 different heads. Each one of them is very well done. I was so impressed with the unmasked heads. Like, I was just kind of like, I couldn't believe how much they look like the cartoon, and I think that is very cool. And you know, what else can I say? This thing is just amazing. It's like, it's mind-blowing how awesome this figure is. I'm kind of at a loss for words, to be honest with you, because he's just so good. It's going to be very tough to find a better Spider-Man figure that does all the Spider-Man things as good as this figure does, you know? I will say, he doesn't completely replace my Mafex Peter B. Parker, because you can't really capture the bummy Peter B. Parker with this figure. And to me, that was like a standout design from Into the Spider-Verse. And when I think about Peter Parker from that movie, I think of that version, the bummy version. Even though he probably was dressed up as regular Spider-Man for more of the running time than bummy Spider-Man. But whenever I think of just Into the Spider-Verse Peter Parker, that's where my mind goes. The bummy old Peter B. Parker. So this figure can't really capture that look. And, you know, you could always take the clothes from the Mafex version and put it on here. But then, you know, that's a pretty expensive kitbash. And that's one thing, too, that I will say about this figure that I wish was different. And that's the price. I feel like this guy is, it's just too expensive. For as good as this figure is, you know, I just don't feel right about paying that much about figures, or, you know, encouraging other people to go pay that much for figures, because it's just like too much, man. It's like, it's crazy how expensive this figure is. And it's hard for me to sit here and go, yeah, this is worth, you know, over $100, almost $200. That's like hard to say for a 6-inch figure. But at the same time, like, this, it's an incredible figure, and I'm so happy to have it. But I just don't like what I had to pay for it, you know. But still, I have it. I love it. I don't regret that I bought it. I just have a hard time saying, yeah, you have to have this, you know, crazy expensive figure because it's the best Spider-Man. There's a lot of other Spider-Man figures out there for sure, so you have other options. But, you know, those options are Not going to be quite as good as this, that's for sure. But if you want this like ultimate Spider-Man, like best best in every category Spider-Man pretty much, you know, you're going to have to pay for it. And yeah, I think the price should definitely be a little bit less on these Sentinel figures. But aside from that, I pretty much have zero complaints. I think this thing is freaking amazing. And I love it, you know. This is like a strong start to 2022. It's going to be tough to top this guy, man. But, man, he's such a great figure. And, damn, I really do love this thing, man. Damn. And that's pretty much all I got to say. So with that, I think that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Also, be sure to hit the bell notification so you know every time that I go live. And if you're not aware, I do go live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Pacific time and every Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So come through, hang out, let's talk about toys and get weird. Thank you very much. Peace.